to call the Animal Shelter Advisory Committee meeting to order. Do we have any public comment?
There's nobody signed up for general public comment, nor are there any signed up for specific agenda items public comment. So we can proceed with staff reports uninterrupted if it's the committee's pleasure.
Okay, so we have no public comment today.
Correct, no public comment.
All right. Then item number 3, consent agenda. Consider approving the November 20th, 2025 Animal Shelter Advisory Committee regular, excuse me, meeting minutes.
I'll motion.
I'll second.
The second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Consent agenda is approved. Item 4, regular agenda, presentation of monthly shelter performance for November 2025, presentation made by Animal Services Manager Amanda Weedle.
Alrighty, so we had 39 official adoptions. However, we also had an additional 11 adoptions that were pending their surgeries, meaning that they weren't going home in the month of November, but they had already signed the contract and bringing a total to 50 total adoptions for the month. We had 39 transfers to rescues, 21 redeemed by owner, and 4 wildlife releases. We did have 93 deceased. We had a total of 288 left in custody with a 54.19% release rate. Of the 93 deceased, 52 of them were dogs, 25 were cats, and 3 were other. That is a typo. Of the total deceased, it was 19 aggressive, 29 sick or injured, 3 bite investigations, and 26 for capacity. We had 380 field calls, 142 stray responses, 132 enforcements, 70 wildlife, 20 bite investigations, 5 transports, and 11 owner released or seized intakes. We did break our bites down. We had 6 animal to animal and 14 animal to human. We also broke down our citations. We had 32 citations for the month of November. As you can see, 1 was for secure enclosure, 14 were for dog at large, 7 were failed to spay or neuter, and 10 were failed to vaccinate.
Does anyone on the committee have any questions with regard to Amanda's presentation? All right, then moving on to item B, presentation regarding proposal to improve conditions at the animal shelter facilities, including new kennel pod structures and future administration building. Presentation made by Animal Services Manager Amanda Weedle and Construction Manager Al Torres.
Good afternoon. Is this on? Good afternoon. I'm Al Torres, Construction Manager for the City of San Angelo. Is there a clicker for the slides or you've got it okay? So basically, I was asked to come here and update you as I did to council at the last meeting on what we're proposing. So this first slide here, basically is the site. I think everybody here is familiar where the shelter is located. So if you can go to the next one. So basically, to give you a brief history, and I'm sure some of you are aware, but some of you I think may be new, and in case there was anybody in the public, we were asked a few years ago to look at the conditions at the animal shelter. As you know, there's a lot of issues going on out there. Primarily, the things that we were asked to look at were the noise, the smell, the drainage, the conditions basically that were in the large dog kennel area. So we looked at that and decided that the best way to address that is basically just overhaul that large dog kennel area, but then go ahead and look at the facility as a whole. So what we proposed to do is completely overhaul the exhaust system. We were going to do a new DOAS unit. We hired some engineers to come in, and basically they were just going to gut everything and redo it. We were going to lower the ceiling in that large kennel because it's basically a big cavern in there, to try to cut down the noise, and then divide it into 3 smaller areas so it doesn't echo so much. We were going to install new trench drains. A lot of those drains were failing. They're undersized, so we were going to rip those out and put in new trench drains. For a big open area, we thought that might be the best solution. We were going to replace ceiling tiles everywhere because they've absorbed odor over the years, stains, etc. We were going to remodel the tame cat area, update the processing room, and take in new garbage intake areas. So over time, we had plans developed over that time, but we had a lot of challenges as we went through. We had issues with the fire alarm system. It took us a while to work that out with the fire marshal's office and Intertel. Then we had some concerns with the electrical system. As you remember, the facility next door was built. They tapped into the same power source that we were going to, so all of a sudden we didn't have enough power. So we had to redesign to get more power to the facility. And then we also have some issues with changes in the law for HVAC systems. So a lot of that stuff caused the design to kind of drag out. And then we started looking at what we were going to do with the dogs during construction. You know, were we going to do a temporary facility? How were we going to house those dogs? So we started looking at that. So we looked at a facility off-site. We found a place that already belonged to the city with some buildings that were empty on it, and looked at creating a temporary shelter that we could move all the dogs all at once, keep them there, and then when we were done, move them back off-site. The original ballpark numbers by the contractor showed that we could do that for about $200,000. We thought maybe it's worth spending that money, but then when it came in, it was closer to $500,000. So we backed up and said, wait a minute, do we really want to spend $500,000 on an off-site facility that as soon as we're done with it, we're going to shut it down and not use it again? Can't we spend that kind of money back on the site and do something that would benefit us in more of a long-term solution? So that's when Amanda and her team came up with this idea, or came to me with this idea of these smaller pod systems. Basically, rather than housing a large kennel, we have smaller 20, 25 kennels per building, pods that are located outside the facility that give the dogs exposure to outside air. Each kennel has an outside kennel with a guillotine door so the dogs can go in and out and spend the time outside if they want to. It improves airflow, sanitation, and reduces disease spread. The drainage system we're going to use, Amanda looked at several ones, and we're going back to regular drains instead of the trench drains because that helps reduce disease or spread of disease. And then these will be designed, first of all, so that they're not facing exactly each other, so the dogs minimize how much the dogs see each other, so that cuts down on how much they bark at each other, but also landscape areas and sidewalks around each of the buildings so that when the public comes to visit, they can walk around and see the dogs from the outside. The inside would be used pretty much just for staff to do maintenance and take care of the dogs from the inside. So basically this approach, to me anyway, and I think Amanda then would agree, the original approach we were looking at was fixing the issues that the public sees, you know, the people that go and visit the site. But what it wasn't taking into account was the health and the welfare of the dogs and the animals themselves. I think this new approach flips that around and is concerned with the health of the animals first. So I think this is going to be a much better solution. So what we're looking at is a design of about 4 months, and I'm waiting on a proposal from the same engineers that designed the first part. It's a different team. It's a team of architects this time instead of engineers. So far, I think they've been very responsive, so I'm waiting on a proposal from them. Construction, we're looking at 4 pods total. So, and I'll let Amanda talk about the numbers here in a minute if she wants to, but basically 4 pods. And because of the money, we're looking at building 3 pods for sure, because we have money. We're comfortable that we have enough money for 3 pods for sure, possibly a 4th pod. And council directed us to go ahead and move forward with looking at building all 4 pods. And if we're short on money, we'll go back to them and address that. And then phase 3, sometime down the road, we can consider an administration building to go along with this.
So with this plan that we're putting together, number one, the biggest driver was the cost of the temporary building. The temporary building did not have outdoor indoor runs for them. It was a structure with them inside only, which still presents the problem of disease control, socialization, anxiety, stress. And when we were looking at the cost of that, that would be money that we would not be able to recoup at a later time. With us having adoptions now, we wanted to bring a more modern and more studied setup that is healthier for the animals, healthier for individuals as far as noise and sensory overload for both the animal and the person. Disease control, we wanted to get away from the chain link kennel doors and the old style pen looks and have it more modern with the starlight fronts to where they are not getting overstimulus looking at each other, but at the same time, they are still able to be looked in on and observed. And it helps with disease control as far as sneezing, coughing, because you have a barrier then between the hallway. With this, when he pulled up the numbers for these pods, the pods basically were costing the same amount as the temporary, but we would have them forever. We would be able to set up the plumbing where it's not as much of a strain. Currently, we're still dealing with plumbing issues within the general populace area, as we have plumbers coming in and assessing each kennel to assess where the flooding is occurring. This doesn't stop the entire general population area. It would, if something went wrong where an AC unit went out, where plumbing issues, it only affects that one building instead of all 4 of the buildings. And so we really thought that fiscally this was the more responsible. It was the more responsible for animal welfare and for citizen components of what they trust us with.
The cost of the pods and the funds available, we currently have just a little over $2 million available that council has earmarked for this project already. The overhaul of the large dog kennel in the original building was going to be about 1.8, and then another 200,000 for the temporary shelter that was allotted. So a total pot of about $2 million. These that slide says 900,000 for design and admin costs. That's going to be closer to 300. That 900,000, I put that in there when I was still considering the administration building, but that's going to be down the road. We're kind of pushing that to the side for now. It'll be about more like $300,000. The pods themselves are going to be from 350 to 500,000, depending on how fancy we make them. Basically, we visited a shelter in Abilene, and we really were impressed with how that facility was run, what it looked like, how it was laid out. But like I said, they had some things that Angela and Amanda feel like we probably don't need here. We could still do a great facility without some of the bells and whistles that they had, but it's still going to be a great facility, I think. So I think, like I said, I'm comfortable that we can do that, at least 3 pods for $2 million, but I think we might be able to do all 4 pods. So If we had to do it in two steps, step one would be, you can see the existing facility there, and we would leave space between the new pods and the existing facility. For sometime in the future, if we decided to do an admin building, we could build something there in between and then get rid of the facility or use the facility as is. You know, we'll address that once we're done with this phase. And then phase two would be a fourth pod. And then, like you said, you can see areas, sidewalks and landscaping around each of the pods where people can walk around. We would also have, this facility we visited, they had meet and greet areas that were landscaped, shaded. A couple of them had pavilions, trees where you could take dogs individually and families could, you know, meet the dogs and play with them and make sure they get along. They're in different corners around the kennels.
The black squares, right there in between the two are where the meet and greets would be.
And you can see some of the outside corners too. So basically, these are photos of the facility we visited. You can see the first couple of slides are just outside shots of the kennel themselves. Each of the, you know, you see the sidewalks where the public is walking around, and you can see the dogs. The kennels are, like Amanda said, they're isolated from each other, but the dogs can see, you can see them. The slide on the right is one of the meet and greet areas. Basically, there's AstroTurf on the bottom. That one doesn't have a pavilion, but some of them do.
One of the things that we also are looking at with this, because it opens up a lot of possibilities as far as volunteer work, community service work, with outdoor-indoor runs, there is a reduced chance of interaction with the animals for those subjects. So the animals can be put outside to clean the inside, and that opens up those avenues for that, as well as it opens up avenues as far as cutting down the time it takes to clean. Because currently, in order for them to clean, they have to take an animal out, leash it in the hallway of that run area, clean the kennel, then put the animal back. And it's just double and triple work that takes a lot of time. We are currently trying to look at things that are reducing it, but at this time, that's where we're at. And this setup would help us to eliminate that. It would also be set up where it is easier to spot clean, because if someone makes a mess inside, you just put them outside for a moment, clean it, and then open it back up.
How many animals are going to be able to be held?
I was about to mention
Okay.
that, but I'll let Amanda expand on it after. I was going to say, this is not going to increase the capacity of the facility. We're talking about roughly 24 kennels per building, to 25 kennels, so that's roughly 100 dogs, but of course they double up dogs in some cases, brothers, sisters, that kind of stuff. But the facility that we were looking, I mean, the plan that we were looking at before wasn't going to increase the capacity either, because a lot of that's based on how many employees, how much staff they have, rather than just how many kennels can we build. So, I mean, Angelo or Amanda, let y'all expand on that.
And maybe I have a misunderstanding, but these are new buildings that you're producing.
Correct.
And so what are we going to do with the current?
The plan is to shut it down and to look at alternatives as far as if we're going to keep that building, looking at socialization areas and things of that nature instead of kennels. We're not at that stage yet, just because we do not know if later down the line we're going to be looking at a brand new admin building, or if we're going to keep and remodel the current. So, but the plan is that once those are up and operational, that general population is not going to be utilized for general population any longer.
Okay, thank you.
If they're going to have 24 per pod, or about dog kennels, are they doing anything different for the cats?
Again, that's going to be with the admin building after these pods are done. Right now, the focus is to reduce the illness, to reduce the sensory overload for adoptability, and to address the plumbing that we're having issues with, as well as the HVAC system issues that we're having issues with. We do have a secondary plan that is not prepared yet to present to city council because our focus is on getting this portion fixed first. But then we are looking at if they will approve a new admin building, which would address the cat issue, the cat area and all of that. So with this plan for the dogs, we're looking at about 24 runs per pod, which would be 96 runs total. Now, that doesn't mean that our capacity is going to be at 96. Our capacity is still going to be at 140 because it's not factoring in our isolation area, our quarantine area, and our puppy area that is still within the main building. So those areas will still be utilized. It's just, we're not going to adjust lower to the number that we currently have.
Average, what would qualify for what you're talking about, not being in the regular pods like today? Do you have 20 in isolation?
So
Average, what?
I mean, it varies. It varies based on the amount of owner surrenders. Every dog that comes into the shelter goes into our isolation area first, so that they can be medically assessed, behaviorally assessed. Any type of court hearings, they stay back there. Puppies that are too young to get full vaccines, they generally will stay back in the puppy ward so that they're not getting cross exposures with touchy fingers. And so it varies from week to week. There are constantly animals being moved out of the isolated room to general once their stray period is up and we have an opening.
Okay. So that's going to stay in the current building?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
From what I heard the last presentation where you were going to try to do an off-site building to temporarily house animals while you fix what's going on there versus this plan, I think this is a much smarter, easier, less expensive, and better for the dogs. Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I agree too.
I have a couple of questions. Who was the engineer architect on the old plan?
Building or the plans to remodel it?
The remodeling it?
Okay, the plans to remodel it was Freese and Nichols was the engineer. The architecture part was done by me.
And who is the current one?
This time around, I'm going to have Freese and Nichols do the entire part, the architecture and the engineering. I'm a department of one, and this is a
So it is the
big
same,
project.
it is the same person?
It's the same engineers.
I thought you said that it was somebody different.
Well, no, it's a different team from, Freese and Nichols is a large company. And in the first phase, since I did the architecture part, I hired them to do the engineering, the mechanical, the plumbing, the electrical. In this case, I'm hiring them to do the entire project. So their architecture team is in charge. And it's still going to be their same their same team of engineers that's going to do that part. But their architecture division is going to be doing the plan as a whole. But it's still the same company, Freese and Nichols.
Do we have a dollar figure on what we've already paid them?
Do we have a what?
A dollar figure on what we've already paid them?
I don't have it off the top of my head, but I can get you that.
Is that just lost?
No, it's in my records.
No, I mean,
Oh,
we're just out of that money.
basically, yes.
And are we confident that I know there was an issue with the electrical. That seems pretty basic.
Yeah, but we weren't aware when we started the project that they were going to build a facility next door and it was going to tap into the same power system.
And
I think the issues that we've had weren't necessarily their fault. They were just things that happened.
That the AEP records were not updated when that
Right.
additional development happened out on the neighboring property. And so when Freese and Nichols downloaded that information, it was incorrect information at that time, but it was not that Freese and Nichols missed it, and it wasn't that we missed it. It's that it was never updated in the core records for those meters out there by the electricity provider.
Okay,
I haven't had any issues with them or feeling that they've mishandled the project in any way.
okay. The electrical, has that been resolved, is that on the city to fix that? Or is that the electricity provider that's going to put more transformers or whatever they need to do?
A little of both. I mean, the engineers have to design what's needed, but the AEP will probably bring in the different system transformer.
And is it on them, their dime, or the city's?
Most of that is, yes, correct.
Okay. And then I had a question on the viewing. There's no viewing from like the inside where, is that like plexiglass that's on the inside part of the kennels?
So we're looking at Starlight Kennels. They'll have a solid base bottom where the aerosol, sneezing, coughing, anything like that will not be able to project to the hallway, but the top will be bars. There won't be any public viewing in there because the staff will be in there caring for the animals. Now, if there's an animal that is refusing to go outside and being stubborn, we will at times walk people through, but
Okay.
it will be
Escorted.
under supervision.
Okay. And is there any, I think about different weather, is there any kind of covering where on the paths where the people would be viewing the animals, or?
We're looking into that as well.
Okay.
But we don't have that solidified yet.
Yeah, currently the facility that we looked at, they don't have coverage for the people that are walking. My thoughts, and those were, if it's raining and somebody absolutely wants to see the animals, you could walk them through the inside if you take them in there. But for the animals themselves, those roofs are going to overhang several feet out over the kennel, so that if there's light rain at least, the dogs can still go out there and be protected.
Okay.
And shade as well.
Okay, for cleaning and stuff, okay. Okay, and the surface on the outdoor part of the kennel is what?
Again, we're in the early stages of putting that together. Once we actually have a plan to meet with the engineers to go over as far as making sure it's non-porous and making sure that it's slip resistant, things of that nature.
Okay.
But as far as what type of specific coating, I don't have that yet.
Okay, and this, one of the things on the old, I was wondering if it was still gonna be the new garage for the intake? Are y'all still gonna get that?
I've already done kind of a preliminary layout for an admin building. So if we move forward with an admin building, it will include an intake garage.
Okay,
But for now, we're gonna keep going with what they're doing now.
okay, okay.
Good questions.
Not a question per se, but I've worked with kennels like this, like the pod and the guillotine, and I think it's way more efficient. So I'm definitely on board for this project. I think it's great. It cuts down time probably in half for cleaning.
That was our assessment as well.
And my understanding is, I think you mentioned that it will not increase the need for staffing.
So it will allow us to focus on staffing for our foster program, volunteer program, rather than getting additional shelter staff. The amount of time that it currently takes them to clean one row can be as many as 2 to 3 hours, depending on how extensive it is and how full it is. That being said, that time is going to be cut in half with the outdoor indoor runs because you're not having to handle the animals and worry about them in the hallway. This is also going to allow them more space, the animals. We're looking at approximately, and we have to look at the exact measurements that the manufacturer allows for these Starlight kennels, but approximately 5 by 5 on the inside and 5 by 5 and then 5 by 10 on the outside. So significantly more room for them.
Good question. Do you currently have an indoor meet and greet area?
Currently, I have one room for a meet and greet indoor area. When we have more than one, for example, if someone's looking at a dog in the meet and greet, we will take a person into the cat room if they're meeting a cat. That way they can meet it in an enclosed room. And if someone is waiting to see another large animal, either one of us takes it on a leash outside with the person looking at them, or if it's a puppy, we'll bring it out in our arms in the lobby.
I asked because I've seen that be a successful best practice is just having that indoor area. Maybe it's turfed, maybe not. That way they can see the temperament, they can play, they have that alone time kind of thing.
So, and with this, we wanted to make sure that we stayed within the budget so that we could get this done now. And so we are focusing on these pods first and foremost. However, when we do re-look at the admin building, the main building, that is something that we already have a general idea of what we want and what we have put together as far as a design. It's a matter of funding and making sure that it can get approved. We didn't want to compromise the entire project for that building, so we're doing it in sections.
Has the engineer architect ever designed anything like this?
Yes, they have other shelters that they have on their resume.
Okay. I just was wondering if, when y'all visited the one in Abilene, if they already had a base plan.
So we did talk to what their pros and cons are with all of these, what were not designed as they would have preferred, what problems they've seen since they constructed it, so we know exactly what to avoid as far as the plumbing. They had a system, they had for lack of a better term, an oversized toilet that they would flush. The idea was to flush all the feces down it. However, with water pressure, it did not work as they intended. And so it was something that we want to make sure to avoid something of that nature so that we're not just throwing part of the costs away. Regarding the plumbing, we wanted to make sure that we had individual drains instead of a trench system to avoid cross-contamination down the road. They told us what AC units they used and what problems that they've had since opening and what to avoid. They also told us what they were using successfully as a heating source. And so they've been in operation long enough that those little move-in bumps have already occurred. So we know what they've dealt with, and they're local, so we know that the terrain is not going to be different, the weather's not going to be different than, say, if we were to go to somewhere in DFW or in East Texas. So I think it was a very positive aspect and got us very well prepared.
Are there any other questions for Al or Amanda before we move on? Okay, moving on to item 5, follow-up and
Thank you.
administrative issues, discussion and possible action related to 2026 meeting dates. Amanda?
So I know that there were questions about the city ordinance. We have held off on an update on that at this time until I meet with legal. I meet with legal at the end of next month to go over proposed ordinances and what we're thinking should be changed to make sure that it aligns with the state law, the city ordinance, and the city views. So we want to have that prepared before I present that here.
Is there anything else?
I have a question. I don't know if this is, we're in the admin section, right? Maintenance. I don't know if this is something that needs to be put on. But I would like, in that, I'd like to know what legally is supposed to be done. Last night I got a text. There was somebody at the Walmart on Sherwood Way selling pit bull puppies for $250. And they called the police, and I think the police just ran them off. Are they ticketed? Are the dogs confiscated? I mean, we don't have a breeder permit, so I know they didn't have a permit.
So as far as whether or not animals would be confiscated, animals can't be confiscated by law without a warrant.
Okay.
They are considered property, and so we have to have a seizure warrant. Same with the police, they'd have to have a seizure warrant. As far as citations, it is at the officer's discretion, and I don't speak for the police officer. I got the same report late last night. We did not have officers on duty, and it was not something that would typically be an after hours on call. However, we are patrolling those areas and making sure that during the day, we are also not seeing that. I am also having a meeting at the end of the month with Assistant Chief Scott, and I will bring it up with him so that we have an action plan for patrol officers after hours. But again, we cannot tell them what they should and should not do.
But it's in their
It is-
purview, their purview to issue citations for no breeder's permit, or are they
So-
legally not allowed to sell like that? Is it
It's
just
actually a component of an itinerant vendor permit that can be issued by the police department. The breeder's permit generally refers to what happens in a home or sales happening in a home or having unaltered pets. But even if you don't live inside city limits, which is commonly what we see with people selling at like a Walmart type situation, if you come into city limits and are selling anything, watermelons, puppies, whatever it may be, you are required to get an itinerant vendor permit from the police department to do that. And it is under police's purview to enforce failure to get an itinerant vendor permit for that. And so we're not a part of that process except to, after the fact, get the police report. If they collected owner information, if the owner in fact lives in city limits, then we can follow up on the failure to get a breeder's permit. But we're not the entity to issue a citation. It is at the police department's level, which is what Amanda's going to follow up on.
But it's not legal for them to be there doing that if they don't have the permit?
Correct, and that's why the activity was halted, but it is the officer's discretion whether to issue a citation or not.
Okay, I know years ago I called in one, I just got home from a transport and came home to somebody selling dogs, same situation. And the first time I called the dispatch, they were clueless. They were like, well, what do you want us to do? And that was years ago though. And then eventually they did get out there, but I'm just wanting to make sure that that is the appropriate action to call, and the police are supposed to come out there, and whether or not they write a ticket, it should stop if they don't have the permit. Okay.
I believe that we can put this as one of the topics for discussion for the next meeting, if you'd like that to be considered to be included on the next agenda.
Well,
Thank
if it's at the, I don't know if we want to have a police personnel here, but if it's up to their choice of whether or not they write the ticket or not.
So, and that's any Class C misdemeanor citation. It's at an officer's discretion of how they enforce, whether it be citation, warning, or verbal. It's up to each individual officer. Typically in police departments, I can tell you this from my experience working at a police department, they do not give, in most cases, a zero tolerance orders to the officers, because those officers are the ones that are observing the violation. Therefore, those officers have to choose at their discretion what they enforce.
And I think Kathleen's right that we need to move on since this conversation's not on the posted agenda.
When are you supposed to meet with the police?
I meet with him once a month.
Oh, you do?
And so-
Okay,
Yes.
okay. Okay.
Are there any other questions or comments?
I have an administrative item. This is actually going to be my last meeting with y'all. I do have plans for retirement and have an official last day on the books. So it has been an absolute pleasure to serve alongside y'all and the dozens of ASAC committee members that have come before y'all. And I know you're in good hands with Amanda and Angela. So thank you for your continued service. And unfortunately, I won't be back in this setting, in this position at your upcoming meetings for 2026.
Thank you, Morgan. I'd like to say personally, and I think I can speak for everybody who knows the landscape here, during your tenure, you have handled a particularly taxing and thankless job with a tremendous amount of grace. And thank you very much for everything you've done.
I totally agree.
So I have a motion for adjourn.
I'll second that.
Second.
First or second, whichever one's needed.
All right.
I thought I
You
heard
need a
second down
third.
there already.
All in favor?
No,
Aye.
aye.